Welcome to the Health Angle Podcast with Dr. Mike Headley and Dr. Gordon Fimwright, where we'll be exploring different angles of health to achieve the best version of yourself. Now here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Gordon.
Welcome everyone. I am Dr. Mike Headley and with me is Dr. Gordon Fimwright. Welcome, Dr. Gordon.
Hey, Dr. Mike. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Health Angle this week. And today's subject is technologies that we're using in the airports, Dr. Mike, the scanners, the full body scanners. The reason I wanted to do this is I've been traveling a little bit the last couple of years, and I always seem to be the one that's picked for those random tests where they want to do a full body scan on you. And you have to sit there with your arms out to the side, and then it has this big technology that scans you. And I did some research years ago and found that it's probably not so healthy. There's ionizing radiation and everything else. But I did some recent studies just for this podcast, and we're seeing a different technology being used. Now, you can ask the TSA agents, hey, is this healthy? And they're going to say yes. And the manufacturer, they probably have information saying, yes, this is safe. But is it? And I want to go full dive into this subject and talk a little more detail. So for travelers, is it safe? Is it not? Should you do a pat down, or is it okay to go through this device? Welcome to this week's episode of the Health Angle Podcast.
That's really always concerned me too, Dr. Gordy. When I travel, I don't travel as much as you, and I haven't traveled in a while with airplanes. But I always just, when you're standing in there and that scanner goes around you, or when you go through, I go to some hockey games or different sporting events, and you still go through some kind of a scanner to see if you put your keys in your cell phone, in your wallet, right? And then you walk through and it either goes red or green. Like, what kind of scanner is that too? I mean, there's just a lot of different things that we get exposed to. And we think, oh, it's just once a week when I travel, or once a year, or once a month when I go to a sporting event or whatever. But we're going to dive deep into it because I found some pretty interesting things, as I'm sure you did, and we'll share with our listeners. Because, I typed in to a couple different AI search engines, the damaging effects of EMF from scanners at airports, the safety concerns of EMF in electronic cars, and then just EMF in general on what we need to watch out for. And I know we've talked about this a lot over the past year or two, but it's a bigger deal than people realize. So I'm excited to share with our listeners.
That's great, Mike. Yeah. And if you haven't seen our podcast on EMFs, electromagnetic fields or frequencies, definitely check it out. We cover a lot of different things that you can do to optimize your health potential. So, Mike, I want to talk about those big scanners because that's front and center on my mind. So there's two types of scanners. The new ones are called the millimeter wave scanners. The older ones are called backscatter scanners. I'd say about 2013, they started to use the new scanners, the millimeter wave scanners. But prior to that, Mike, they used to use ionized X-ray basically for those scanners, the backscatter scanners. So the new ones, the millimeter wave radio frequency is an energy that they use to detect objects. So obviously people can hide under their clothing, anything from weapons to contraband. And the purpose of those scanners is to catch that. And the older back scanners, ionizing, they're X-rays. They've been shown to damage DNA and cells, and it's been linked to basically cancer and cancer risks. Now, the claim with the manufacturer and the TSA and the government is that the millimeter waves penetrate only a little bit into the body, a few millimeters or less. And the negative effects would be just kind of minimal, maybe with the eyes on some people, the skin or the outer tissues, rather than the deep organs such as an ionizing. And when you think of ionizing, you think of penetration like of medical equipment, like an MRI or an X-ray, penetrates deep, and it can really cause damage to the organs because that ionizing radiation can disrupt DNA and therefore the organ, and it can be the root of different types of cancers. Insulin pumps could be affected, and they could also fail. And there's also people with pacemakers that could have certain negative impact. And I'm talking about the millimeter wave scanners, the new ones. I was taking kind of a deeper dive, wanted to find out a little bit more. It's like, is this accurate? And it's kind of interesting what I found, because a lot of sources were talking about repetitive traveling, or people that repeat travel. They do a lot of traveling. And you had mentioned the scanners and all the other EMF exposure, and even including inside an airplane going from coast to coast. There are certain degrees of exposure, and we can talk about that later. But there's also higher risk for people that are pregnant, or young children, or immune compromised, besides the electronic devices that people have to wear. So the TSA and the government agencies, they claim that the scanners, they're non-ionizing radiation. There's no DNA damage. There's minimal energy exposure. Now, are these claims true 100%? If you take a deeper dive, there is no long-term safety testing that's never been conducted, especially by a third party. So that's one. The article argues that the millimeter wave full-body scanners used by the TSA don't damage any DNA. They pose no health risks at all. However, in a study by Los Alamos, and this was a study done in 2009 by Alexandrov, among others, they looked at how it would affect the DNA, these new scanners. So what they found, Mike, is the terahertz, that's what's used in these millimeter wavelengths. And what they found is they unzip the DNA strands in theory. So that does, in fact, have a biological or a DNA consequence to us as human beings. And then we just talked about, there's no long-term safety studies, there's no third-party trials. And then the cumulative exposure, you add that to this. Is there any studies done on children, pregnant women, and those that are wearing implants such as pacemakers? So the reality is the TSA scanners aren't FDA approved like medical devices. Like, Mike, if you use an X-ray, I use an X-ray in our practice, or you go to a scanning center and they do an MRI, they have to be FDA approved. But however, these medical devices that they're using, even though it's not for medical equipment, but for scanning us human beings, and we're still being scanned, our tissues, they haven't been through these studies, these rigorous studies that should be done. So the question is, should we err on the side of safety until proven otherwise? I don't know. So the radiologists and government agencies are downplaying the risks. And if you look at past things that were downplayed, such as X-rays, mercury fillings, smoking, or cell phones, those are now found to be unsafe. There's a lot of studies proving that there's a lot of damage to them. So I don't know, Mike, what's your thought on this subject?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as concerned personally because I don't use those devices a lot. I'm curious, though, what about the people standing next to the scanners? Because I
Yeah.
had some x-rays here this year, and every radiology employee always wears their scanner for scatter radiation, and they have to be tested constantly and monitored for scatter. If it's zero, it's zero. But if it's a lot, they got to take time off and kind of reboot. But I'm
Yeah.
curious how safe they are standing there scanning people and having people walk through there, and then they're having our luggage. They're scanning our luggage too. Those people staring at those screens. I'm really curious what the long-term
Yeah.
side effects are
You,
for those people.
Yeah, you can also look at the contents. Is there some contents that you're traveling with that absorb this or somehow have a negative factor? I don't know. Dr. Mike, we should have did more studies on this part of it, and maybe on another podcast we will. But if you look at a microwave, for example, there is scatter radiation just from a normal microwave. So if somebody has an older microwave and it's not sealed, guess what? If you're standing by it waiting for your cup of coffee, not only are you getting bad stuff, radiation from what's being exposed to the contents, but also the scattered radiation. So it's pretty scary when you think of it that way.
It is. So I wanted to touch base on one of those back scanners that they used to use too. This is what I came up with. There's no verifiable independent scientific testing of the safety of the backscatter scanners. Some scientists believe that the high quality images produced can't possibly be obtained with the low levels of radiation that are described, and that the actual level may be 45 times higher than what the manufacturer is claiming, because they want solid pictures. They don't want some blurry black and white fuzzy thing. So you have to have a lot of radiation to get those images. Because of the scanner's X-ray beams are concentrated on our skin, they aren't distributed throughout the volume of our entire body. There's concern that the dose to your skin could be dangerously high. And I don't know about your experience, Dr. Gordy. A lot of my clients that come in the last few years have bandages on, and they say, oh, be careful with that spot. I had such and such removed. And a lot of people have skin cancer today versus 25 years ago. It seems. That's my unofficial research. And so if this is just blasting the surface area of our skin, it could potentially make people's skin issues a lot worse. And listen to this. The former Homeland Security chief and co-author of the Patriot Act, Michael Chertoff, is one of the primary promoters of full body scanners and is a paid consultant for the companies that sell them, of course. You always follow the money, right? You always follow the money. Is it safe or not? Just follow the money. Of course he's going to say they're safe, no matter what the research says.
Well, that's interesting, because if you take air flight and there's a catastrophe or a flight goes down, there's going to be third parties going in to investigate. So I'm really surprised. The airline seems like they're pretty good getting third parties and getting an independent review of what really happened during a crash. But why aren't they doing that through like the TSA procedures? Kind of surprised at that.
I've followed Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt for many years. He's buddies. He's kind of a mentor to Dr. Mercola, and he talked about this with just EMF in general and walking through the whole body scanners. Women should take drastic steps to lower their EMF exposure during pregnancy to reduce the risk of having an autistic child. Microwave radiation from cell phones, scanners, Wi-Fi routers, and similar devices concentrate 20-fold in the womb. Okay, meaning whatever the reading is outside the womb, the measurement will be 20 times higher inside the mother. Klinghardt found the average exposure of an autistic child to high-frequency electric fields from household currents, microwaves, cell phones, other wireless scanner technologies was 20-fold higher than that of non-autistic children. Non-ionizing cell phone microwave radiation has also been linked to Alzheimer's and infertility, especially in men, both of which, like autism, are rocketing skyward in terms of prevalence. So one of the best strategies to eliminate exposure to EMF is during our sleep. That's a third of our life approximately. So turn off Wi-Fi, and that's why we've talked about it in detail in one of our other podcasts. And so it does affect women and pregnancies and has an outcome on their children. And so really protect yourself from cell phones. Don't just set it on the belly. Don't just stand in front of microwaves. In my opinion, really protect yourself from EMF exposure when you're pregnant.
Good points, Mike. And I just want to say that when I do go through the airport and I do get selected, or they just take you and want you to go through that full body scanner, I always opt out. I ask for a pat down. Yeah, it feels a little weird. You got to, sit there in front of the public and do your pat down. But you know what? I don't want to take the risk. Have I done it before? Yeah, but minimally. Is it that much of a risk? Good question. I guess I want to just err on the side of being safe. So I pat down. Cool. If I'm in a hurry, maybe not. What I want to cover now, Mike, is like if you're in the air flight, there's different categories of the flight. And I want to just talk about what the primary risk is and how to mitigate it. So the first one is when you're flying from coast to coast, for example, yes, you are exposed to a certain degree of radiation. A coast-to-coast flight, how much radiation do you get exposed to actually? They say it's equivalent to a chest x-ray every 20 flights. Now, I'm sure you're going to find variations to that, probably even more than that. Some other categories to be aware of when you're flying: Cosmetic radiation, slight DNA cancer risk for frequent flyers. Yes. How to mitigate? Limit flights, especially if pregnant. The next thing is low oxygen. You don't get a lot of oxygen when you're flying. It can lead to fatigue and dizziness. So the key is to move, breathe deeply, and avoid alcohol. Dehydration is another one. Again, that can cause fatigue, deep vein thrombosis risk. So the key with this is drink water and drink often and move your legs. And then the deep vein thrombosis, again, that basically is blood clots. And so you move your legs. So for those that know they're really susceptible, compression socks. And then you got jet lag. So this is sleep disruption. So use light exposure, get light exposure, and use melatonin type strategies. Another one is infection, like if colds and flus. So just make sure you wash your hands, vitamin D, everything you can do to optimize your health potential, immune system. So those strategies. Watch our podcast on how to build a strong immune system. And then the noise. Fatigue. So there's simply a lot of noise on these air flights. So use earplugs or noise cancellation headphones. And the next one is stress. Some people get a lot of anxiety, or the cortisone is really being released during flights. So deep breathing and mindfulness strategies would be key for this. So Mike, nice and short, that's about all the information I have for today's podcast.
I just have a couple other things. Yeah, now sources of EMF exposure on airplanes, power systems, wireless communications, electronic devices. It absolutely affects our cognitive abilities, sleep disturbances, cardiovascular effects, neurological issues. Also, there's cancer risks. My sources talk about mitigating EMF on airplanes, limiting use of electronic devices yourself. Are you going to have earbuds? And I had a client tell me today, they just read an article this week that a lot of professional athletes are choosing to use their Beats and or headphones before the game with wires instead of wireless because of the Bluetooth and all the EMF that could be draining their energy 1 to 2 to 3 hours before a game or on the flight across country, like you said. And so they're going back to the wire headsets to listen to their music and different things like that. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So the word is out there. People are reading articles on that and reporting it. And you can choose your seats wisely, sit away from EMF sources. They say the avionics bay or wireless access points. Window seats, especially those near the wings, tend to have the low EMF levels. Use wired earphones. Like I said, a lot of athletes are choosing to do that now. Stay hydrated and well rested. That's why I like magnesium, and we did a whole podcast on magnesium because it's critical to stop the shunting of calcium into our cells to give us brain fog and oxidize our cells and really hurt ourselves. I found almost exactly the same information on the EMFs in electronic cars, Dr. Gordy. And, limit exposure time, use shielding materials, choose a vehicle with low EMF levels, maintain a safe distance. Anyway, infrared saunas are super popular now. Far and near infrared saunas, you plug them into the wall, etc. They have high EMFs, a lot of them. So you really got to watch out for a lot of electronic devices and all the EMFs that you get exposed to. So here's a trivia question for you, Dr. Gordy. Over the last 10 years, do you think male sperm counts are around the same as 10 years ago? Sperm counts are higher on average or lower on average? What's your answer?
Oh, Mike, we get exposed to this all over. If you follow any kind of wellness circle, you know that those have drastically decreased, unfortunately.
So I've heard that a lot, and watch out for laptops with Wi-Fi, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't plan on having more kids say, oh, it's just low sperm count. And it's like, I don't need to worry about it. I'm not having any kids, or I've had kids, or it's only low sperm count. So I took a deeper dive into that. Here's what I found. Mean sperm counts in men around the world have dropped by 51.6% over the past 50 years. Total sperm counts are down by 62.3%, and the decline is accelerating.
Wow.
So an environmental factor that might play a significant role in this trend is EMF exposure from wireless technologies, also referred to as electromagnetic radiation, or radio frequency EMF, scanners, cell phones, laptops, tablets, saunas, etc. Recent research, Dr. Gordy, found that men who use their cell phones more than 20 times a day had significantly lower sperm concentrations and total sperm counts than those who only use them once a week or less. So, Wi-Fi equipped laptops, computers, etc., etc. So, you can really lose a lot and damage the sperm count in just 4 hours of continued use. So what does that mean besides just low sperm count? Well, what it really means is it's hormonal disruption. It does significant mitochondrial damage, and not just for reproduction. It damages our mitochondria, which damages our cellular energy, and you get hormones disruptive. It can lead to early cancers. And it's a really big deal, actually. So it's just addressing the EMF pollutions today and just how people hop on planes and go all over and whatever. The primary danger is mitochondrial disruption. You can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't smell EMFs, you don't feel it unless you're getting brain fogged or just kind of zapped after being on the computer a lot. So that's why a lot of people don't think it's that serious, I believe, because you're like, I feel fine. I have good energy. I sleep fine. I don't need to unplug Wi-Fi. I listen to my wireless speakers all the time. It doesn't matter. And they found out that there's very few EMF-free places on planet Earth now. Like you can't escape it.
Yeah. I mean, you look on your phone, and we talked about this during our EMF podcast, which we really encourage our viewers to watch because that's really an important episode that we did. But if you go onto your Wi-Fi signals on either on your computer or your cell phone, you can see all these frequencies passing through you every moment of every day. And then you add all the electronic devices you use at home, at work, in addition to the frequency waves that are always passing through you. It's more than scary. People are having problems with fatigue. They don't have the energy. They're not sleeping well. And are they taking a critical look at the exposure to the EMFs? Probably not. I think it's really underrated. I agree with you, Mike.
It just to touch back on the low sperm count, hormonal imbalance, testicular dysfunction, can lead to obesity and diabetes, cardiovascular disease, could link to some autoimmune disorders. We just really need to have a clean diet and lifestyle and exercise and really protect ourselves from that. And not doesn't matter your age, if you're a teenager or if you're 80, we just need to protect ourselves from EMF to stop this disruption of our hormones and our mitochondria and our cellular energy. So it's going to be interesting to see all of the smart devices. Someone brought up to me today all of the bandwidth that AI is taking up and all the energy production and how that's all going to work out. Because I like searching on a certain AI search engine personally, and I think you use it and like it. So how's that going to affect our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, depending on where these power sources come from? And I'm not going to give up my computer right now because I use it. And so it's going to be really interesting. I had two people come in today, though. They're switching out their smartphones for a flip phone because they just don't want to get on social media and scroll. They just use it as a phone. So if I don't need to call someone, I'm not checking anything. Or, those are harder to text on and harder to communicate with. So I'll just have it as a backup plan for a phone. And so that's kind of interesting that people are starting to opt back out of smart technology.
Yeah, I've seen and I've heard of parents going to the flip phone for their kids. And what they're finding is the kids aren't on their phone with all these apps and social media, and they're becoming more engaged and being present and less depression, less anxiety. They're becoming more functional human beings. So it's kind of amazing.
That's cool. And I know my daughter was a senior last year, and that was the first year in our high school that they wouldn't allow cell phones in school. And then the surrounding towns too also started that, and it was more positive than negative. halfway through the year, it got a little slack. Some teachers said, whatever. If you're done with your homework or you're done with your assignment, you can get on your phone. But for the most part, they were supposed to be out of school classrooms, and that was such a good start. I mean, that kids are communicating more and talking to each other, and they actually are looking up instead of down on their phones and
Right.
tablets. So we can make some small little changes, and it can make a big impact.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, and the social abilities too improve. You find like a lot of young adults, even, teens and young adults, some of them are just not good with interaction. And you're just thinking, well, why? Well, I don't remember this being an issue when I was a kid and growing up. Usually you communicate, cool. But there's this lack of being exposed to communicating that people lose their effect. You have to practice that when you're young, and getting away from the mobile devices and TV and screen time makes a difference.
Well, Dr. Gordy, you inspired me. Next time I fly, I'm going to ask for the pat down. See if they can reach up to my head and shoulders and pat me down. And you don't have to strip down for that, do you? Into your underwear or anything?
No, you got to kind of broaden your stance. You put your arms, straight out to the side. And when they do use the back of their hands, they're checking you, and they go up high into the groin. So it's a little bit invasive, but they're using the back of their hands. They're very professional. They're communicating with you. But the reality is it's a pat down. And the process of the pat down is to find out if there's anything hidden on you. It's professional, and to know what it's for is a safe flight ultimately. And I accept that. Plus, I get the health benefits of possibly of not going through or getting too much exposure. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to opt for that next time. Thank you for that. I didn't know there was a choice, actually. I thought they just did it random. So I'm going to take the choice. So I appreciate everyone for listening. And I like to end the show with asking you, what's your number one takeaway that you can share with a colleague at work tomorrow? And what's your number one action step that you can take based on what Dr. Gordy and I talked about with the EMF and EMF scanners at airports and just overall EMF exposure in your life?
Thank you for joining us on the Health Angle podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and catch us for our next episode.